Patch 2.0 dropped, and it was amazing. Phantom Liberty is an absolute 10 out of 10. But there's more good news for Cyberpunk 2077.
So not gonna lie, both Phantom Liberty and Patch 2.0 are kind of blowing me away for Cyberpunk 2077.
Obviously.
Not because they're good, I honestly always thought they'd be good, but they're a much larger success than I think most people, myself included, were expecting. As this weekend, Cyberpunk 20...
That does make, honestly, sense. That does make a lot of sense. Because, remember, this game on launch was an absolute buggy mess. Okay, it was barely playable for some people, and you couldn't survive 2 minutes in it without seeing something that's pretty much game-breaking and completely working not as intended. So yeah, anything above that is honestly really good. And Cyberpunk 2077 now is in full form, returning. Only took them 3 years to fix, but at least they fixed it.
2077 had 274,000 people playing it at the same time on Steam.
A lot.
This is a player count that we have not seen for this game since the month it came out. Before October 1st, the last time 274,000 people were playing Cyberpunk 2077 was December of 2020, nearly 3 years ago. So now we have a situation where a 3-year-old, nearly ancient game by gaming terms, with one of the most controversial releases in gaming history, is hitting player counts that it hasn't had since the month of release. That is absolutely insane. Like, yeah, remember when things with Cyberpunk 2077 went crazy again around the release of Edgerunners? We even got a tweet from CDPR describing how they were over...
Dude, this is so true. If you did not know, by the way, Edgerunners was such a phenomenal, without question, success, by the way. That it revitalized Cyberpunk as a game. The player base shot up pretty noticeably. And that's all because of Edgerunners. And if you haven't seen Edgerunners, you should. It's really, really good. It literally explains the dynamic of men existing and women existing, by the way, ironically also. Man dies, hopes that women has a good life. Woman has good life. Not even a care in the world. Who died for me? Man, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Over 1 million players playing this game each and every day. During that time, we only hit 136,000 concurrent players on Steam. So now we are quite literally doing more than double that. And when you start to look at some of the hard details, it only gets better for CD Projekt Red. Phantom Liberty is a huge success from the player count perspective, but it's also been a massive critical success. Phantom Liberty get tons of praise from critic reviews, some of which call it the best expansion for a video game that they've ever.
Dude, if an expansion could be nominated for Game of the Year, it would be unironically nominated. Without question, 100% it would be nominated, because everyone's of one opinion. No one is calling this bad. It has choices, good dialogue. It's essentially what Starfield would be if Bethesda fanboy dreams became reality. It's that good, okay, unironically. But let's be real. Baldur's Gate 3 would still absolutely take the cake. I still wonder what's going to actually win Game of the Year, because there's only 3 options if we're being completely real. Zelda, Tears of the No One Cares Empty Kingdom, but it's a Zelda game, so it has literal millions of fanboys, and that's kind of big. Not Cyberpunk, but I mean Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate most likely will win this thing. And the third one is... Harry Potter, not Harry Potter, but Hogwarts Legacies. Because you need to understand one thing. You're probably thinking, it was a good game, but will it actually win? Well, actually, it was a phenomenal game. Everyone really, really loved it. It was fun, it was interesting, and, it didn't even have any major problems on release. Well, it had some, but okay, that's okay. You need to understand how absolutely dedicated Harry Potter fans are. They don't care if it's in a medium that they never use and they never have heard about it. They're gonna be in force. So I wonder if that's gonna make a difference. Most likely it's gonna be Baldur's Gate. If anything but Baldur's Gate wins, let's be real. The Game Awards are already shit. They just want to be Hollywood and be famous about it. They're completely useless garbage, let's be real, in the first place. But if Baldur's Gate doesn't win, that just means that there's no even point in them existing in the first place. Because Baldur's Gate deserves it by every single metric.
played, but more importantly, fans are loving Phantom Liberty, with 88% of its reviews on Steam being positive right now. And this even extended to Cyberpunk 2077 itself, with the recent reviews on Steam shooting up to 87% positive. Patch 2.0 is definitely putting in some legwork with the rest of the audience, even outside of those who have bought the expansion. And I think we've reached the point now where I can officially say it. Cyberpunk 2077 is the greatest comeback story in gaming history. The game had a truly disastrous launch, and unfortunately, at the time, it wasn't even all that uncommon to have this disastrous of a launch. But while some of the other devs out there just flat out abandoned their games after that launch, or even started...
Dude, how do you expect Anthem to not be abandoned, honestly? The game was made in the last 2 months of its before launch. If you don't know, by the way, yes, Anthem is a AAA game that no one knew what it's gonna be about until in the last three months it just got cobbled together. Unironically, that is the story of Anthem. That's seriously it. And this is Fallout 76, which is still a disaster that no one should play.
To fix things, but then largely moved on before the fixing job was done, and among them, CD Projekt Red was the standout. They've stuck with Cyberpunk 2077 unlike any other developer I have seen, and now, almost 3 years later, it is truly one of the best games to release this generation, at least for a lot of players. And one of the funny parts about this all is, along the way, Cyberpunk 2077 also just kind of became one of the best looking games out there. I'm not really sure if we have NVIDIA or CDPR to thank for this, but some of the visual enhancements to come to Cyberpunk have made this game shockingly well optimized while also looking...
Remember, Starfield fanboys are gonna tell you that this looks worse than Starfield, by the way. They're gonna unironically try and tell you this. If anyone tells you Cyberpunk 2077 is not one of the best looking games of modern time, they're flat out lying to you. Or they have no idea. Because it is. It very much is now.
Incredible. Like right now, I could run around Night City getting 120 FPS thanks to DLSS 3.5, but still have full path tracing on with things looking ridiculously good. This is a 3-year-old game. It shouldn't look this good, and it shouldn't look this much better than most of the other games coming out around right now.
By the way, one thing about these big, juicy graphics, I absolutely hate them, because the reality is, these options make it look unreal. For example, the lighting. The maximum lighting settings just make it that you can see, for example, that wall, this wall right here. But that would never happen like this in real life. It wouldn't look like this. So when I see this, it's very off-putting. These ultra mega big graphics, because they are not realistic in the slightest. You see this glare from the asphalt here, from that light? It shouldn't be that big. There's absolutely no reason for it to be that big unless the surface of the asphalt is smooth-ish and wet. But is it? No. So while the super huge graphics options, updates, or whatever you want to call it, are nice, man, I hate how absolutely vomit-inducing unrealistic they are at the same time. It just feels so wrong in my head.
It's much better than most of the...
Yeah, look at this. The fact that it can create so much light here is insane. This is not real life at all. Not even close to it. It looks so wrong. I look at this and my brain goes like, wait a minute, are you not in a city? Is light pollution not literally fucking everywhere? How is this so much brighter than this? How does that make sense? Is he driving with, how do you call this in English? Long distance lights on? Long distance lights? Is that a word? You know, the ones that are more brighter and you're supposed to turn them off when someone sees you? Well, someone's driving towards you. Man, it just feels so fucking wrong.
other games coming out around right now. And I think one of the biggest points of praise we should levy towards CDPR is giving their devs the time to fix these things. Not releasing your expansion and this massive revamp of the game with patch 2.0 until 3 years after release is a super risky move. I mean, honestly, ask yourself, around the release of Cyberpunk 2077, would you honestly predict that people would still be interested in buying more content for this game 3 years later? And that content is coming out just a few weeks after Bethesda releases their next major RPG? Honestly, I think taking their time with both the expansion and patch 2.0 really benefited consumers, but it definitely was a risky move by CDPR that paid off in a major way because both of these are incredible. But don't worry, because they're not even stopping here. A few days ago, CDPR released a list of upcoming changes that are going to be dropping with patch 2.01 for Cyberpunk. And some of these changes are pretty big and important. There was a bug where you could fall through the elevator floors while playing the heist at low FPS. So on one hand, that's hilarious. Definitely not the introduction to the game a lot of players should be having. Another pretty big issue, the UI showing controller inputs bug is getting fixed. I've encountered this one a few times on PC, where after loading into the game, all of the icons show up as if I'm playing with a controller despite having no...
Well, no game should ever be designed with a controller in mind. You know, if you're playing an FPS game with a controller, you're bad. Admit it. Admit it. You're probably there in whatever games forums every day saying, auto assist is auto aim is too weak for the controller, please buff. And there's like a literal million other people like you. Bruh, just use a mouse, please. You're embarrassing me. I don't want to be seen with you in public. Come on. Just use a mouse. It's less expensive than a shitty console, and it's gonna probably last you honestly longer nowadays than a shitty console. So just don't use a controller. Maybe if you're maybe if you're chilling with your home slices and you're drinking or something and you're playing fighting games, okay. Controller, okay. But no, not when you're gaming on your own, okay? There's a level of dignity I feel that gamers are just forsaken for some reason, and that is the fact that controllers are for fucking pussies. Self-delete your Minecraft character now, you controller using trash.
Controller plugged in. With patch 2.01, you will be able to once again switch to ARM cyberware while cycling through your weapons, which is a really handy change. Vehicle radios are going to be a bit louder, so you can properly hear them while driving around. There's going to be some performance boosts for the game.
If you don't think radios are important in games like this, you have not played Vice City, okay? You have not.
All but specifically targeting Dogtown, which is very good to hear. I really do think Dogtown is one of the best looking districts in Night City, and it'll be great if it actually feels a bit better with us getting some extra FPS in that district. But perhaps most important of all, the corrupt save problem on PlayStation is going to be solved. This was a rough one, where basically save files on PlayStation were hitting the save file limit and thus corrupting, so then it was just gone. You can reload an earlier save that didn't hit the limit and thus didn't.
And PlayStation is the better one of the two gaming console systems, bruh. Imagine, Xbox would probably just become sentient to off itself if you tried to play this game on it. Wow, that's impressive.
Corrupt, but once a save was corrupted, there is no recovery. And even with this update, it'll increase the limit, so hopefully the corruptions stop occurring, but if your save was already corrupted, you're doomed. You either have to reload something earlier or just start over. Interestingly enough, this was actually the exact same issue that Skyrim had on the PS3 back in the day, and this is just a sample of some of the fixes that are coming. It seems like some other, perhaps smaller fixes and improvements will also be coming along with these larger ones. So on one hand, great news that this new update is going to be dropping. Patch 2.0 is not the end for Cyberpunk 2077, and that may even be true in more ways than one, as we have also just recently heard from the Cyberpunk game director that there are plans to do a little something more with this game. And now, before you get too excited, this is nothing on the scale of patch 2.0 or Phantom Liberty. Cyberpunk 2077...
They're gonna do another patch. No, I don't mean a patch, but they're gonna do another expansion. Like, with how well this expansion was received and everything, there's no way you don't, right? This game still looks more fresh than anything that is released in the current literal second from AAA. So it's not gonna age badly, it's gonna age well. And if the expansion is as good as Phantom Liberty, people are gonna love it. People are gonna very much love it.
77 is not getting another expansion, but smaller.
Initially, I was skeptical about the fact that they're releasing this expansion and it's pretty expensive. After the game's initial release and was horrible, and how long it took for 2.0 to come out, and the majority of problems get fixed. Yeah. But nah, it turns out that I was wrong. It's good. No one was even mad because the expansion is just so good. And remember, bugs don't matter in the game as long as the game is good. Pay to win does not matter in the game as long as the game is good. So, the reality is, as gamers, we are 100% okay with overlooking anything a game does badly as long as the game itself is good enough. Okay? Look at how much things we are overlooking in World of Warcraft Classic. The game's barely functional, honestly, in some aspects. Talent points that are completely useless, skill trees that just flat out don't do anything or work, items that are redundant, questions that are bad, and no one cares about any of that just because the game is good at the end. That is the power of a good game.
Updates are definitely coming. So on one hand, back up your mods, and then two, maybe some of those more annoying features will still be fixed in the future. And right now, CDPR is likely going through a transition as development on Cyberpunk 2, otherwise known as Orion, is going to begin ramping up as confirmed by the game director as well.
Wait,
in just a couple of days, we're going to be getting a lot more information on
Cyberpunk 2? Okay, that sounds really good because they're not gonna make the same mistake releasing it in a bad situation as Cyberpunk 1 in this case, I guess. Dude, that's gonna be big.
On all of this. On October 5th, CDPR is streaming their own Investor Day. And as opposed to some of the earnings call streams, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, this is actually going to be a multi-segmented panel discussion with a bunch of devs getting involved. There's going to be 3 panels in total.
Yeah, you see the lighting? You see how horrible the lighting is? Come on. Look. Look.
A bunch.
Yeah, you see? You see how much light it gives off there? It's completely unrealistic garbage. Absolutely 100% shit.
Of devs getting involved. There's going to be 3 panels in total, each of these being around 1 hour long. We'll get some insights into the production of Phantom Liberty and the transition to Red 2.0. This is CDPR's plan to develop 2 AAA titles at once.
Ooh.
They're actually doing this already, with the new Witcher game and Phantom Liberty being developed in tandem. But now is
Bruh, boys, press F in the chat for the guy who wrote the Witcher novels, books. Are they novels? I don't know. Who wrote the Witcher books? Because that guy thought that the Witcher games are gonna be absolute garbage, so he didn't ask for a portion of the profits, and they offered him a pretty big slice. He asked for a one-time payment of like 5 or 10k or something like that. F in the chat, boys. Wow. That's because he was an old kook who didn't know that gaming is even popular. he was a guy who thought that people are still mailing letters to each other. Oh my lord. And then he tried to sue CD Projekt Red for the fact that he made a mistake. He tried to sue them to get royalties for the games sold, even though... And yeah, that obviously did not go well for him. Because no court is gonna take you seriously when the reason why you want them to pay you multiple millions is, well, I got fucking salty.
As we start to see Phantom Liberty wrap things up, they are going to transition to developing the Witcher game and the Cyberpunk sequel at the same time. So with that in mind, I wouldn't be shocked if we at least get a mention of the Cyberpunk sequel here, and perhaps some timelines as far as building out this new CDPR studio that they are designing. There's going to be a look into game and tech insights around Phantom Liberty, featuring some very notable devs like Pal Sasko will be here. I'm really excited for this one. Phantom Liberty is visually very impressive. It really is Cyberpunk at its best on multiple fronts. improvements, including visually, and finding out how exactly that was made from Pal Sasko is always a good thing. And finally, some of the business highlights from Phantom Liberty's launch will be shared, likely giving us a more direct look at how big of a win this really was for CDPR financially. Hopefully we get some concrete sales numbers.
I mean, of course this was a huge win, right?
And perhaps even a sales update on Cyberpunk overall. So make sure to get subscribed, because I'll be covering whatever CDPR talks about here in detail. And overall, it really feels great to just finally arrive here. It feels like for years now, we've been seeing Cyberpunk 2077 take leaps towards redemption as major updates and fixes were shipped, but it was really with Phantom Liberty.
I mean, it's true that there were major... Is this gonna be okay? Because my internet is currently... It just died. Well, anyway, I hope they do make huge leaps, because, you know, they did a gradual thing to make the game good. But man, that was not a lot, I'm not gonna lie. It took a while.
Liberty and patch 2.0 that got us over that finish line to turn Cyberpunk 2077 into a truly great game that just about everyone can recommend now. I mean, even as you just look at patch 2.0, the fact that they went back and revamped a ton of the miscellaneous things about the game's core story, or just to try and make the experience a bit better and more enjoyable, really feels like the devs went out of their way to make sure this was better. Like, while playing patch 2.0, it feels like there were developers who were actually playing Cyberpunk and were like, okay, I think this could be a bit better. I think this could be a bit more fun or interesting, and then going back and making those changes, which is awesome. This isn't a haphazard patch 2.0, this really was a fundamental overhaul. And as I mentioned earlier, it really feels like the executives at CDPR did learn from the mistakes around release. They were able to greenlight an expansion coming to the game 3.
Dude, what's happening with my internet? It's just kind of like dying. Well, it literally, again, just did die. I'm gonna edit that part out. But yeah, this is awkward, not gonna lie. But how's your day been? Having a good time? I hope you're having a good time.
Years after the release, as well as devote the manpower to being able to get a 2.0 update. Like, they definitely could have just left a lot of those core systems as they were. The perk and skill tree was fine, it didn't...
Well, if they left those core systems as they were, people would be pissed. Because the core systems were bad when the game launched. People complained about them.
Need to be completely overhauled, but they invested in that because they wanted to make it a better game, and I definitely respect that, even despite what happened around launch. And a big point of comparison that's popped up with all of this is Starfield. I personally thought it was really questionable from CDPR to be dropping Phantom Liberty just a few weeks after Starfield's release, mainly because I thought Cyberpunk wouldn't get the time of day it deserved, it would be overshadowed by Starfield, but instead it...
Wow. No, I mean, that's a beginner mistake, I'm not gonna lie. Hey, if you watch the Starfield pre-release game release footage of what they showed, you could have predicted that it is a stinker 10 miles away. It wasn't even funny.
It almost seems like the opposite is happening. It's almost like if these
Yeah, so, Starfield's disaster is pushing people and playing Cyberpunk. Starfield's disaster pushed people to do two things, essentially. One, well, actually more things, but it's kind of interesting how to see how these giant titles that appear and they absolutely flop and fail actually push people to play other older and better games that provide the things that title would have provided for them. For example, for role-playing, people are going to Baldur's Gate from Starfield and to older Bethesda titles like New Vegas, which is not a Bethesda title, actually. Yeah, ironically, the best Bethesda game is not a Bethesda game in reality. It happens. You know, and a lot of people went to No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky got a super big resurgency because of the failings of Starfield. And Cyberpunk turns out was also one of the games that actually benefited from this. Because turns out a lot of people just wanted a futuristic type of game. You know, with you know, near future things, future tech and things like that. And when Starfield just did not deliver at fucking all, they went to Cyberpunk. It's the same thing when Lost Ark started dropping the ball on the game. Black Desert received a lot of its players, even though those games are not really that similar. Well, they're kind of similar because of the combat, but they're not that similar. It's very interesting to see how these huge failures of big games are pushing people to play other older games. It's very interesting.
Professional game developers know a lot more than I do, because as of right now, Cyberpunk 2077 has over 100,000 more players on Steam than Starfield. And even by comparison, Starfield's review scores on Steam have been slowly declining, while we've seen Cyberpunk slowly increasing over the past couple of years, especially as of late. And there definitely is a Phantom Liberty effect going on here. Phantom Liberty and Cyberpunk 2077 in general were so good that it does seem like it is souring Starfield for some players. And I mean, this even happened to me to a degree. I began my Phantom Liberty review right in the midst of Starfield coverage, but Phantom Liberty totally sucked.
Nah, don't worry, Juicehead. You have still provided ample Bethesda shilling, okay? You're getting that Elder Scrolls 6 review ticket. You did good. You did good. You're one of those channels that never gave up on absolutely just lying your heart out about how great Starfield is.
Me in to the point where I actually started to change some of my content plans as I was playing through Phantom Liberty and patch 2.0 and realizing how good they actually were. Instead of being relegated to the side story, it feels like Phantom Liberty has taken the main stage by storm. And of course, all the while, Baldur's Gate 3 is just casually sitting on top as a true masterpiece. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you think of any of these games, we've had one of the best 3-month periods in gaming ever. If you're an RPG fan, you have tons of incredible games at your disposal, and I hope you're enjoying at least one of them. And hey,
also
maybe you want to celebrate that. Well, you can with today's video sponsor, Displayed. They just dropped a ton of new
Okay, wow, Displayed at the end, huh? Well, Displayed is one of those rare things that I will say is worth it. It's expensive, don't get me wrong. It's not the cheapest thing out there, but it's actually good. You know, this is one of those sponsors I'm not gonna trash for being absolute garbanzo Alonzo. Yeah, Displayed is good. You know, buy Displayed if you want. It's not the worst thing ever. Anyway, that was Joycehead. Good video. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Anyway, 10 out of 10. This was Quizzer Sid. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.